what's the gap between the interviews and hiring?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if they know.
So you're it then.
Everybody better be nice.
Matt, are you helping, I hope?
I'm trying to.
The building's so busy, they're stealing him.
Yeah, pretty much.
Unfair.
I would say like 80 to 85% of my time is building. And then it's like
How many plans are in plan check right now? A lot.
about 70. Busiest Joe's ever seen it.
And Joe Burrows is the only one doing it?
Yeah. Wayne is working on the online permitting system.
Okay, yeah, I thought so.
Helping out.
Yeah.
The building inspector's doing like smaller ones, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna need the smaller one.
Yeah, yeah, good.
Like Joe Grumpy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, we use the online system a lot throughout California, and some of them are extremely easy to use, and other are just burdened with all kinds.
Testing. All right, I'd like to welcome you to the May 9th meeting of the Design Review and Historic Preservation Committee. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Please note we will not be accepting new items after 10 p.m. So, is there anything not on the agenda from the public at this time?
Do you want to start with a roll call?
Yes, please.
Commissioner Cormany,
Present.
Commissioner Herron,
Present.
Commissioner Thompson,
Present.
and Chair Marr.
Present.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments from the public that are not on the agenda?
No late correspondence was received.
Thank you. And do we have a motion to accept the agenda?
I propose we accepted agenda as presented.
Second.
Thank you. And late correspondence?
Oh, do you want to do a roll call?
Yes,
on
roll
that?
call, please.
Okay.
Jeez.
Commissioner Cormany,
Aye.
Commissioner Herron,
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson,
Aye.
and Chair Marr.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
Great. At this time, do we have late correspondence?
No late correspondence was received.
Thank you. And let's do the consent calendar. I don't see that we have any items on the consent calendar. Oh, yes, we do. We have minutes from the regular Design Review and Historic Preservation Commission meeting on March 14th, 2023. Do we need a motion to approve?
Yes, you do. Yeah, I need a motion, second, and then a roll call.
All right. May we have a motion to approve the consent calendar, please?
I motion to accept the consent calendar as presented.
I second that motion.
And let's have a roll call.
Commissioner Cormany,
Aye.
Commissioner Herron,
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson,
Aye.
and Chair Marr.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
Great. Now we will be moving on to the public hearing section.
I'm sorry, through the chair. Do you want to do comments from the public for items not on the agenda before we move on?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Somehow I'm off on my notes. Okay. Do we have any comments from the public? Seeing none?
Nope. No members of the public have their hands raised on Zoom.
Thank you. Okay. Now, I believe we're ready to move on to the public hearing. We'll start with 4.1, discussion, consideration, and possible action to approve the design review application of Daniel Crawley for exterior modifications to a commercial building, the Cheese Factory, located at 2 West Spain Street, including action to approve categorical exemption pursuant to California Environmental Quality Act, Guidelines, Section 15301. And may we have the staff report, please?
Absolutely. Nice to see everyone this evening. The project before you was last before the Design Review Commission in March. We had a little bit of a hiatus in April, and we went over the project really briefly, and the item was continued to a date off calendar so that there was additional time for collaboration and with California State Parks and for them to review the project. So I'll do a quick overview, but we've already been through it, so I believe everyone's pretty familiar. The site, of course, is the Cheese Factory right off the Sonoma Plaza. There are 2 parcels on the site for a total area of 20,335 square feet. It's a historic building that was constructed in 1945 and was originally used as the Sonoma Cheese Factory for their manufacturing and retail. Adjacent land uses include the Barracks parking lot owned by State Parks to the north, Sonoma Plaza to the south, the Sonoma State Historic Park to the east, and restaurants and commercial zoning to the west. The building is eligible for listing in the California Register of Historical Resources under under criteria 1 for events and for its role in establishment of the cheese industry in Sonoma. It's also located within the Sonoma Plaza National Historic Landmark, but it is not a contributor. is adjacent to the servants' quarters, which is one of the primary issues that State Parks was concerned about. And at the last meeting, we did have draft conditions of approval, but those had not been reviewed and approved by State Parks, or reviewed and commented on by State Parks. So the conditions of approval in the agenda packet incorporate a couple of their comments, and I'll go into a little bit more detail later about there's just some challenges in what we're able to enforce as part of the design review permit. We hear some photos of the proximity to the servants' quarters. An overview of the site plan with West Spain to the left and the Casa Grande parking lot to the right. There's existing elevations. We have the north from the Casa Grande parking lot looking towards the south. This is kind of the back area. The east looking towards the cheese factory from Sonoma State Historic Park. The portion of the building that's historic is this front facade, and that's unchanged as part of this application. And then the west alley, this is where the new ADA access would be. The project is located in our downtown planning district and is zoned commercial, and there are no required setbacks for this zoning district. And no additions are proposed, so there really are no issues with any of the development standards like height, setbacks, things like that. So the project is actually it's a pretty minor project as far as rehabilitating the building for the scope of the design review. So the exterior modifications include fixing up the west side alley, creating a new accessible path of travel and an accessible entry on that west side. Some modifications to the building exterior. It's largely new HVAC equipment on the roof and some exterior finishes as well. For the alley, I'm the architect's here, so he's probably going to do a better job of describing the project than I am. And then we have some modifications to the solid west side door and new lighting, new waste enclosures, new gas heaters, and metal screens. Some samples of the walkway. I think the elevations really help to show how minimal the improvements are. So you'll want to direct your attention to the changes on the roof. I think that's really where you can see the changes the most. There's the proposed lighting and the door. And the proposed exterior finishes are listed here. I think the materials board does a better job of describing what it's going to look like. And as advertised and mentioned, the permit before the commission is approval of the design review application. We have our findings of approval. And staff's recommendation is to approve the design review application subject to findings and conditions of approval. Available for questions.
Do we have questions for staff?
Christina, can you go over the park recommendations and what they said and how that applies to what we're doing here?
Yeah, absolutely. So
Thanks.
in any application, we work with all of the applicable agencies, whether it's the sewer district, fire district, and when we're drafting conditions of approval, it's a little bit of it can be a challenge to convert all of the agency's conditions of approval into one standardized list. At the end of the day, the city can only implement conditions of approval that have a direct link and impact resulting from the proposed project. So our purview tonight are the exterior changes that are happening. So we're not looking at a use permit this evening or some kind of a master plan or anything to do with the use of the property. So what our purview is this evening, it's the HVAC, it's the ADA improvements, things like that. So all of the conditions have to have a nexus and proportionality. There has to be a direct link from the physical improvements resulting from the design review, and then the condition has to be of an appropriate size resulted to the impact. So we coordinated very closely with our legal team and tried to incorporate as many of State Park's concerns into the conditions of approval as we could within our legal requirements. And then some of the issues are going to be between the property owners to work out. So I'm assuming some of the construction is going to need to take place from State Park's property, and so they'll need to work out those access issues and things like that together. And we have Michelle Squire on Zoom as well, and will probably comment as well on those issues.
Was there some late correspondence regarding this? I read it.
The State Parks letter was not late, so it's included in the agenda packet, and it was added. The upload didn't go through all the way, so I think I updated it on Monday.
Thank you.
Would this be an appropriate time in the meeting to then ask about if a construction schedule and or length of renovation has been identified, since it's a big impact to the public right at the square?
We don't typically do that. That's not a standard practice that we have done or needed to do in the past. When we do encroachment permits, things like that, they're only valid for, 30 days?
30 days as they're issued.
30 days. The encroachment permits are issued for 30 days and then they can be extended. But time is money in the construction industry. I don't think anybody wants construction to be extended for a prolonged period of time.
Thank you.
If there are no more questions, I will ask if the applicant is available.
This time I am. So apologies for not being able to make it into the March meeting. I was delayed somewhat. But thank you again for considering this. Thank you again for all the hard work you've done on this. We've had a chance to review the conditions of approval, and they all look like we're able to meet those in a satisfactory sense with both the proposed civil and building design plans as they currently are. So we take no issue with that. In addition to that, we are working with the state on things like right of entry permits for the construction that's going to have to take place. So we're coordinating closely with them and are in good communication with them. We can let Michelle speak to that as well, I'm sure, if she's on here now. But at this time, we don't have any issue with the conditions of approval, and I think we've got a good path moving forward here, and we are excited to move forward here. So I'm happy to accept questions if there are any, but there's not really a lot to say that hadn't already been said in the March meeting.
Do we have questions for the applicant?
I think I do.
Okay.
So I have a question, well, two questions, actually. So on the last meeting, there were several commissioners that made a comment about the signs on the windows that had been put there that were not approved. And I'm just wondering, I know that you had said the signage was going to be a separate application, but at the same time, I'm just wondering why, or if there's not been an opportunity to take those down, and it would just be a sign of goodwill, I think, if we started with things being clean and clear. So I'm just wondering what's up with that, with the stickers.
Yeah, okay, understood. Yeah, I'll get in touch with the operations team and talk to them about that, but it's my understanding that the previous decals that had been there were damaged some way, so they did need to replace those. It's, as you know, the front of the property is in a state of semi-disrepair, what with the awnings and that kind of thing. Replacing the decals was the easy way to go. So if, there will be a future signage package coming through your department, and we'll address everything then. But in the meantime, I'll talk to them about that.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll add, there is a condition of approval requiring that all the signage comply with our applicable rules and regulations that go through the process. And just to inform everyone, the reason it's very vague is because we are updating our sign ordinance. So,
Oh. Do you have a schedule on that?
yeah, August.
Okay. Oh, very well.
I have a question. A couple things. For the record, can you state your name? Because I wasn't here at the March meeting.
Oh, sure. My name's Daniel Crowley.
Okay.
I work with
And
KS
then,
Matson.
again, I wasn't here at the March meeting, but can you address the north entrance and the park access?
With regard to state access?
Yeah, I
or-
just read in the details that the state, there was concerned about that.
Yeah, sure. So I think I'll let Michelle speak to their concerns better than I, but it's mainly to do with construction access and whether or not, we'll have to talk to a general contractor about how much access they'll need. But I'd imagine it would be less disruptive than access from West Spain Street. So we're going to have to work with the state on rights of entry permits, at which point they, if I understand correctly, add their own conditions of approval to that in order to protect their property and just sort of the environment around there while we are under construction.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
I do have a question. Are there plans in place for risk mitigation with, especially I'm concerned with the removal of the cement sidewalk and replacing it with the bricks as far as vibrations and the jackhammer, if it's going to cause any cracks to the adjacent building? Have there been pre-construction surveys? Have you gone inside and seen the condition of the servants' quarters with the state already to see and do you have plans to continue to do that throughout the process to make sure there isn't anything going on over there that you weren't aware of, especially
Yeah,
during that
that's gonna-
patio reconstruction?
Especially with regard to the state side of thing. I mean, they're all historic buildings there, so everything's going to have to be very closely monitored during construction. I'm not a general contractor, so I don't want to. I can't speak to as to what those mitigation measures are, but I'd imagine those are going to be quite significant, both with regard to the state's concerns as they issue right of entry permits, as well as being protected through these conditions of approval as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I can add on to that a
Sure.
little bit. So typically when you have vibration impacts, it's resulting from like pile driving and things like that. I can look up, but typically the PPBs for jackhammers are not, it doesn't go very far.
Even just in that very close.
Well, because it's going to be, the jackhammering is going to be on the west side, not on the east side.
Oh, I guess I
So
had
it's on the
missed
far
it.
side of the building.
So on the side of the servants' quarters, you're not going to put bricks there, and it's just going to stay this current ground cover.
There won't be any jackhammering out there. No, all the new lines, the sewer lines and everything are going in on the opposite side of the building.
Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying that.
Sure.
Anybody else? I have one more question. Sorry, it's along the same pre-construction guidelines.
Yeah, sure.
When you're doing the roof work and as you progress along these improvements, have you discussed with your contractor, with the state, any protection that be placed around the state park area for airborne debris?
Yeah, actually, there will have to be some pretty serious construction barriers, both for that and in a permanent sense. We're also working with the state parks on how to, because interestingly, there is no protective barrier between the outdoor dining area and the servants' quarters. We aim to address that.
Okay.
We don't want to be responsible for any deterioration to that building. We want them to be able to maintain it, and that's kind of along the lines of some of the communication we've had with them.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
that's also in line with conditions of approval. We have a requirement for a historic preservation plan to look at the construction and develop all the measures that would need to be taken to protect the servants' quarters. There's also a construction management plan requirement, so all of the staging and deliveries and things like that needs to be clearly outlined and make sure that it's well thought out and doesn't impact the plaza.
Great. Thank you.
We also have a historic resource consultant on board that has a lot of input into the application already, but there'll be, consulted throughout the construction process in order to
Good. I
meet.
saw that and I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one more, and maybe this is for the architect, but the screen for the mechanical equipment, it shows on that drawings as 40 feet long and 6 feet high, which I'm assuming it's because the equipment is much bigger. My concern is the dark gray color on that red roof, and if you're coming down Spain Street, you can see that whole side of the roof. I'm wondering if there's a way to paint it a different color to blend in better so it doesn't look like a big black wall all the way across.
Fair enough, but I'm colorblind, so I'm going to leave this to Michael.
Good evening, Michael Ross, architect for the project. Great question. So that mechanical screen is actually brown. It's not going to
Okay.
be gray. It's going to be sort of an Oxford brown is the color. And it's 6 foot high, just like you said, in order to hide the gear. But it's also down slope. And so the top of it is just going above the equipment. And so it's not like 6 feet above the ridge line or something like that. And so
Okay.
if you take a look at it now, it's pretty crowded up there. And this will quiet it somewhat. Well, Dan did a great job describing our agreement with the conditions of approval and everything, but from a design review standpoint, there's a couple aspects that I think are interesting. And what are they? And it's patterns of development around the plaza. And one of them is our plaza actually has a pattern of alleys going between existing buildings. So the plaza starts having tentacles or arms. I mean, you know, you can see them all over. And the one at the Sonoma Cheese Factory, unfortunately, has one of the worst looking gates right close to the sidewalk. And so it stops the eye from going down there. And this is going to greatly improve the presence of the building. We're going to be bringing the new accessible path of travel down there to the new side entry, and it'll be this nice, clean pedestrian way to that space, whereas right now it's some garbage cans and a chain link fence. And the other pattern that we're addressing is ubiquitous in many of the buildings. It's the main retail floor is above the sidewalk. And if you go down the west side, there's some shops with stairs, right? Mary Slice was one. The Sausage Factory was another. There's a lot of them. And so the challenge on the Cheese Factory to solve and correct this basic accessibility issue is, one, more jackhammering and taking out all of that floor, or going around to the side, and that's the reason why we proposed what we're doing. So thanks for your consideration, and we're very confident it's going to be a great project.
One more question for you there. For you.
Sure.
I just wanted to have your clarification on one more thing about the front HVAC, the closest one to the facade that you'll be replacing. Will that be visible from the street, from the facade, or it will be hidden?
I'll answer it two ways. One, there's a piece of equipment already up there,
Yeah.
approximately the same size. It's going to replace it. And you can barely see that except from maybe the corner by the Mission looking down the street, looking west. And if you go out into the middle of the plaza and look at it, you can't see it. But when we draw it, you can see it.
Right.
And so I'd like to say that it's not visible, but it's visible when you draw it. And so it's going to be substantially like you see it now, because the equipment's up there. I'm confident that it'll be barely seen at all, no more so than what you see today.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
I have some questions along that line too. More of a technical question, design review. I have a background in HVAC, so just so you know, are you going to use heat pumps or gas packs, or what's your choice? Do you know?
It's going to be a combination. There is, I'm still going to be using natural gas there.
No, because there's probably incentives available to switch to all electric if that was something you considered or not.
Right.
And a lot of times with this new equipment, the higher efficiency rating makes them larger. Have you accounted for some of that in the design?
Everything that you see is the actual equipment on the roof. So where we show it being removed and replaced, it's to scale. It's exactly what's going to go up there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more questions? Okay, I'll open it up to the public now for public comments.
Okay. There are no hands raised on Zoom right now.
Thank you. So if nobody wants to speak, I'll close the meeting to the public and we'll bring it back to the commission for discussion. let's have Commissioner Cormany.
Yeah, it was interesting to see the review. I looked at it pretty carefully because I know it's a pretty important building. It's right front and center. It's going to get a lot of attention. It seems to be mechanically you're going to be simplifying a lot as I see it, getting rid of a lot of the stuff on the roof and probably simplifying the eye line. So I support that. Overall, I don't see anything. I don't have any objections. It seems like the main consideration I had was dealing with the state parks, but you're already way full of that and you're going to have to deal with that regardless because it is such a unique opportunity to put the historic structure right next to it. So, but overall, it seems like a solid approach, and I don't have any real concerns.
Thank you. Commissioner Herron?
Thank you both for going into detail with our questions. Upon review, I was pleased to see that I felt, to the architect's point, a lot of what's already there is actually becoming a little more streamlined with either a fence that is kind of breaking up the eye and making it feel a little bit calmer. But probably the thing I was most excited about was the brick walkway. I think it'll be enjoyable. It will be more pleasant to look at regardless if I would ever walk down that alley. We walk that street often, people in town and tourists. And I think it'll be a lot more engaging on that side of the plaza and accessible. So I do not have any further questions. I was concerned about a construction schedule and honestly just how that would impact the town of Sonoma since it is on the square. But if that's not kind of in our scope or something that we put restrictions and or incentives behind, then I am here to support, and I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thanks. Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, everybody, for showing up and explaining and giving us some answers to our questions. I, too, had some concerns. Mostly mine are about the servants' quarters, but like someone else said, the addressing those from the state parks and knowing that you're going to be working closely with them reassures me on that point. I would love to see this building brought back to its former glory, along with the improvements that you're doing, which I think are really good, a really good start. I would love to see the facade, just cleaned up a little bit because it's looking a little aged, showing its age, as we all do at some point, I guess. But yeah, other than that, I have no big concerns, and I appreciate you going through the process, so thank you.
Thank you. I thank you for your work with the state park projects and with us and with everyone else. It seems like you're keeping the lines of communication really open between all of the parties, and that gives me a lot of confidence for the success of this project as well as possible future projects. And also thanks for being patient with us on the heavy end that we're giving you on this minor project, but I think a proactive approach is going to be the best for a positive outcome overall. And we're not supposed to comment on the grand scheme of the building, but I'll just put this out there. Like, who was the commission that let them build that thing in the first place so close? They didn't give, and the tile, and like, you have a special property, and you're working with a good architect, and I think he's going to be creative for the job. So good luck with all of that. I don't have any issues with this current application as submitted. So would a commissioner like to make a motion to approve based on the
Findings and conditions of approval.
findings and conditions of approval? Hi there.
I submit that we accept the proposed design as submitted subject to the findings and conditions of approval.
Is there a second?
I second that motion.
Thank you very much. May we have a staff roll call, please?
Yep. Commissioner Cormany?
Aye.
Commissioner Herron?
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson?
Aye.
And Chair Marr?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
will move on to item 4.2, discussion, consideration, and possible action to approve the sign permit of Neil Wells at 800 Broadway, including action to approve a categorical exemption pursuant to California Environmental Quality Act, Section 15311. May we have the staff report, please?
Absolutely. This is a follow-up from 2 meetings ago as well. The Design Review Commission approved the landscape plan for 800 Broadway. This project site is located in the Broadway corridor, is zoned mixed use, and was recently approved for a change of use to an oral surgery office. So the proposed project this evening is for 2 new signs. One is a monument sign that would replace the existing monument sign largely in the same place, be a little bit bigger, going from 5 feet tall to 6 feet tall and 6 feet wide. Be constructed of an aluminum cabinet with satin paint and finishes on all sides. The upper portion would be internally illuminated with push-through acrylic letters. Excuse me. The proposed lighting would be with high-efficiency LEDs and would have an automatic turn-off. The proposed illumination is until 10 p.m. We do have a condition of approval that would require the illumination to shut off 1 hour after closing, similar to our standard conditions of approval. The applicant proposes the sign to be located 2 feet from the sidewalk due to the position of the building on the property. The wall sign would be located on the Chase Street elevation and would be a thin profile fabricated aluminum sign with satin painted finish. It would be 5 feet wide and 1 foot 8 inches tall. There's no illumination proposed for the wall sign. Here's the proposed elevation. And the wall sign. As proposed, the signs are a little bit larger than are allowed with our aggregate sign area, so there are conditions of approval requiring compliance with the code, and the same with the location, that it's being required to be moved back 6 feet from the roadway. Here are the sign permit findings of approval. The recommended action is to approve the sign permit subject to conditions of approval.
Are there questions for staff? I have a little question. So, driving by, I noticed that there's a sign already there, which is helpful because we get to see it in real life. So, is there anything that you would like to let us know about that?
Yeah, I can't comment on the fact that the sign is there. My job is to analyze the application pursuant to the code, and unfortunately the signs don't quite meet the code, so they do require a building permit, so they'll be required to meet code through the building permit process.
How much of a variance are there over, is it number of square feet exceeding?
I don't know.
I mean, is it little or not very much, just trying to quantify?
Let me check the staff report.
Didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Christina, I may have this. I believe in the staff report it said the maximum allowable aggregate sign area for the site is 66 square feet, and the sign being proposed would be 54 square feet.
That sounds right. And then there's also an issue with the size of the illuminated sign. So the maximum size of the illuminated sign is 18 square feet on each side. So there's like 3 different issues with the sizes.
I see. All right. Is the applicant available? Please state your name for us.
Of course. Neil Caldwell, Well Designed Premium Signage. Thank you to city staff for your time on this and for the commission hearing this item. I'll just address the things that came up first, just off the top, and then we can talk about the design and I can answer any questions related to it. So in terms of outliers, for the aggregate sign area, we're actually within the allowable. So for the property, we can have 66 square feet of signage. We're below that and we're at 54, something like that. So the total sign size is within the allowable. We Where there's exceptions are that the setback from the sidewalk is not going to be able to meet that 6 feet because the available area from the sidewalk to the edge of the building is just very narrow. So what we're asking for is, can we have the same setback of the current sign that's there? And I'll speak on that sign here in a moment. So that would be an exception. The other, in relation to the allowable size of each sign face, is that an illuminated sign is supposed to have, interior illuminated sign should not exceed 18 square feet per side. So our sign measuring 6 by 6 is 36 square feet per side, so we're about double over that. However, if you take a look at the actual design of the sign, only the upper cabinet portion is illuminated. The bottom half is not illuminated. The upper portion measures 2 feet high by 6 feet wide for a total of 12 square feet per side, which the allowable is as much as 18 per side. So I feel like with those factors given, and that we're only illuminating that upper portion, that we would fall within the allowable. The sign that's currently existing was from the previous real estate office, Coldwell Banker, that existed there for many years. Because this is a medical facility and they had opened business and they needed something temporary to identify the location in the meantime, we produced some panels and slid it into the existing cabinet. It'll get replaced completely with hopefully the newly approved design. Are there any other questions on that I could answer?
I'm just curious. So after 10 p.m., there's supposed to be a shut off, and there was asked to be an exception because of emergency services. So if someone calls or someone's coming after hours, what's the protocol for an on off? Is this a manual? Someone will flip a switch and it'll turn on if a call comes in? Is it automated? And I'm just curious about user error of the turn off, or is it going to be on all night because someone forgot to turn it off?
So it's both. The way that the time clock will work is that it will automatically turn off at 10 p.m. And then someone can manually turn it on, but it'll only roll through one cycle. And then by the following day, it will default again to its on-off settings.
And just to get technical here,
Yeah.
the cycle is then through the night?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there, in your field of work, is it possible to have a shorter duration than if one call comes in? I don't work in emergency services, so I'm not sure
Yeah.
how long this would take, but could there be a shorter window where something could turn off?
I can look into that. So part of it is that, so we can program timers to run just about any program that we want to. The question would be, if it were turned on, could it get automatically turned off before, within a time frame? To be totally honest, I don't think we have that capability, but you'd basically be talking about the sign being on for one night duration, and then it would reset.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know what the frequency is, but I just know that they do provide emergency medical services, and so there's times when they get people showing up at night. So that was the reason for the request.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, just one more note on the design itself. You've all seen the landscape plan and reviewed that and approved it. So obviously, in conjunction with the landscape, it's going to soften the look of the sign and everything else in with there. So I think everyone can agree, as you drive along Broadway, it's a nice addition to the corridor. Any other questions that I can answer?
All right, thank you. Do we have public comments?
And there are no members on Zoom right now.
Okay, great. So we'll close the meeting to the public and bring it back to the commission for discussion. Commissioner Thompson?
I don't have any concerns. I think that the project looks to be pretty straightforward. I understand that it's bigger than what's approved, but I feel good that the illuminated part is within range, and yeah, I think it's a good to go.
Thank you. Commissioner Herron?
I would echo in full Commissioner Thompson's comments. I understand that square footage of what is actually being illuminated, and the size, I saw the sign, as is for the size. I don't have concerns, and I understand the setback. So no further comments for me at this time.
Thank you. Commissioner Cormany?
I've been watching the construction because I go by there daily. I like it. Looks good. I was a little concerned about the illuminated because we've had a lot of conversations in the past about illuminated signs and size and footage and conversation. That's probably part of the guideline that you're working on right now, I'm sure. But hearing that just the top portion is illuminated makes me feel better about that. And overall, aesthetically, I think it's really nice looking. So I think you've done a nice job and I have no problems.
Thank you. Yes, I share the opinions of my fellow commissioners. Totally understand what you did there now, and actually I'm kind of cool with it. I mean, I'm not the authority on that, but I think it's pretty clever, and it's nice to have the preview. Like Commissioner Cormany said, I also have the concern about these lit signs on Broadway specifically. We've had other applicants try to squeeze in a lit sign on Broadway. Currently, we don't have any of those on Broadway, if I'm correct with that. That being said, I understand it's for medical purposes, the emergency after hours. That's a valid concern. So I'm hoping that a lot of this will be kind of addressed in our guidelines for the signs going forward. And yeah, hopefully we can organize and kind of come up with the strategy for lit signs specifically on Broadway or not. But for this specific project, I don't have a problem with it.
And through the chair, if I could interject for a
Yes,
moment.
please.
So the application and the noticing was just for the sign permit. And so the conditions of approval are what are required for the sign to meet code. In order to approve anything that did not meet code, this project would require a sign variance. So we do not have the materials in the packet to approve a sign variance this evening. We just have the findings of approval for a sign permit.
Got it. Thank you. So would a commissioner like to make a motion to approve?
I'd make a motion to approve the sign permit. Oh, yeah, subject to findings and conditions of approval.
I second that motion.
May we have a roll call?
Yep. Commissioner Cormany,
Aye.
Commissioner Herron,
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson,
Aye.
and Chair Moore.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
Moving on to item 4.3, discussion, consideration, and possible action to approve the design review of Madeline McClellan for an addition to the Sonoma Valley Hospital to accommodate a new MRI machine at 347 Andrew Street, including finding the project categorically exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to section 15301 of the state CEQA guidelines. May we have a staff report, please?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a really exciting project. The Sonoma Valley Hospital is a really important part of our community, obviously. The project site is a 3.5 acre site that is bounded by Andrew, 3rd Street West, Betancourt Street, and 4th Street West. The existing hospital is a 75 bed full service acute care district hospital, the suite of services. It's a hospital campus with several buildings that have been built over time from the 1950s through the most recent renovation and expansion in 2014. And so the proposed project would be to add an MRI building on Andrew Street. So there's no expansion of the hospital as far as number of beds and servicing and capabilities. So this is just a design review for the actual building. So this would be located in an existing covered storage area, and that would be demolished, and it would be constructed between the existing hospital with the west wing to the west, the central wing to the south and east. The location was chosen due to its proximity to the radiology department. The new building would be approximately 50 by 36 with an accessible ramp on the north side. And the exterior finishes would match the existing hospital, which went through design review in 2014. So there's also going to be 3 decorative wood pergolas, and a secondary entrance to the proposed building is located on the north wall. We have the site plan. It's a little bit hard to see on the project plans because it's so small compared to the hospital. I think the photo simulations in the narrative are the most helpful, I think. Here is the proposed building looking southwest, southeast, another view southeast, and the materials board. There are no development standards for this facility. It's a little bit interesting for our public facilities. We don't have floor area ratio, site coverage, setbacks, anything like that. So we're really just looking at the overall look of the building. And we have the design review findings of approval. And staff's recommendation is to approve the design review subject to findings and conditions of approval.
Thank you. Is the applicant available? Please state your name for us.
Hello, I'm Madeline McClellan, representing Sonoma Valley Hospital.
Would you like to share about the project?
Sure. Like Christina said, it's an exciting project. The hospital is looking to expand upon their radiology department. Currently, they have an MRI trailer on their campus, but it is a temporary trailer, something that's doesn't have the impact or the patient care that they wish to promote throughout the community. And so this is in an effort to solidify that service for the community, for Sonoma and the surrounding communities as well. So the intent of the project is to utilize a modular building for ease of installation and cost effectiveness. It allows us to demolish portion of the building, the existing hospital building, and install this building without substantial impact to the existing hospital. So, yeah.
Thank you. Do we have questions for the applicant?
I have some questions.
Sure.
So the existing MRI trailer used to move. I remember when it used to share between Napa, and now it's kind of been permanently kind of wedged in there and landscaped in. Is that going to go away, I'm assuming?
Yes.
And they're just going to open that back up to the outdoor park area?
That is my understanding. It would open back
And
up.
then the other thing when I first looked at the design was looking at the driveway, which I don't know if anybody ever uses it. They used to do COVID testing a little bit through that drive-through.
That's right.
They'll still be able to access that.
They would, yes. We'd be putting in a new curb cut in order to, because we are impacting that existing driveway, we'll be putting in a new curb cut to allow that access to continue. But you are correct that the driveway is, and that covered, what used to be the old emergency department, is not currently regularly used.
Well, unless you're smoking cigarettes. No, thank you.
I do have a question. On the back side of the hospital, Betancourt Street, I believe, there's machinery back there that makes a humming and a buzzing. First of all, I'm not quite sure what that machinery is. And second, would this project have any effect on that mechanical stuff back there?
No, there would be no impact from this building. This building will be operating as a standalone building, so it will have all of its own mechanical and electrical equipment and its own services. In response to your question about the machinery on the south side, there are existing generators over there, and then there's, I believe, the chillers also over there. And so that's probably the chillers are what you're hearing.
Okay, thanks for the information.
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
Does this increase capacity by size or just convenience? Or, I mean, obviously there's an advantage not being in a trailer, but the benefit?
Well, there are several benefits to putting in a permanent location. It does provide a better path of travel for the patients. The facility will be able to utilize their actually recently opened new radiology lobby, and this building will be just off of that. And so you've got patients who maybe have ambulatory issues, and then not only that, but then the staff, it's easier for the staff to bring patients from the waiting area into the new MRI space versus taking them currently outside the trailer. And so this is definitely an increase in bettering the patient care model. In regards to capacity or the amount of patients that they would be seeing, I can't speak to that, but I would imagine that having a permanent facility with easier access to the waiting room would allow them to see more patients at a time.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Well, and then the aesthetics are matching the addition of the ER, right? The similar colors and tones.
Yes, yeah, the aesthetics will be matching the EDOR addition that is immediately adjacent with the stone, the stucco, and the bronzed aluminum metal that you see on the windows and the awnings. Similar on Betancourt too.
It's going to look much better than what's there.
Yes, I think there was an agreement from everybody on that point.
Any further questions? Do we have public comment?
There are currently no hands raised on Zoom, and no one in the public looks like they want to speak.
All right, we'll close it to the public and bring it back to the commission for discussion. Commissioner Cormany.
No, it was nice to see this. I actually looked at the plans pretty closely just out of curiosity. But I think it's going to be an improvement, honestly, compared to what's there. It's kind of no man's land now. So I think it looks like it's nicely done. There's consideration to making it match the existing. I have no objections. I think it's benefit for all.
And Commissioner Herron?
I would echo all the same thoughts as my fellow Commissioner Carmody. I'm excited. I used to walk by that on that side of the street quite often, and I think the improvement, having it match with the stone and the stone wainscot and stucco and the wood pergolas, I think it's going to look really nice. And the fact that it's taking over an existing structure rather than being a true addition or encroachment makes me also have less concerns. And then just in a general kind of excitement for the town to have its own permanent home for an MRI machine, I think is a really big win for our town. So no further comments from me at the time.
Commissioner Thompson.
I feel the same. I think it's going to be a great improvement and addition to the community. Anything is better than those weird arches. It's like, what were they thinking? Anyway, but yes, I have nothing but support for it. I think it's awesome that we're going to be having something permanent and available instead of this feeling of temporary medical care. So, no further comments. I think it's great.
I feel the same. This is just a huge improvement to the whole facility. I'm glad to see that there's improvements, and my favorite part of it is when you're looking at that elevation, it suddenly breaks up that monolithic, huge, it looks like an airport taking up the whole block. It breaks it up all of a sudden, so it's not going to be as monolithic, especially for the folks who look at it across the street. It kind of creates that same sort of harmony of little buildings going down this street. So I'm just so happy about that. And the color variation is really, really like popping that effect out. So that's super great. I think it's beautiful and wonderful. So I'm all good. Would a commissioner like to make a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve the findings.
Subject to findings and conditions of approval.
Okay, subject to findings and approval for agenda 4.3.
I second.
May we have a roll call?
Yep. Commissioner Cormany,
Aye.
Commissioner Herron,
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson,
Aye.
and Chair Amar.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
Do we have items for discussion, staff?
We do have items for discussion. We have lots of exciting things going on. I mentioned briefly our sign permit changes. So we have hired a consultant who is looking at our sign permit ordinance and going to be simplifying as much as possible. We're trying to make everything as clear and simple as possible so the rules are just crystal clear, and then moving forward those would be approvable by staff. So we would have two different levels. There would be a sign program, so those would still come to the Design Review Commission. So any property that had 2 or more tenants would be required to have a sign program, and then as new tenants come in, staff would approve those sign changes. And we also recently had our design review streamlining ordinance approved by City Council, so that will go into effect 30 days from the 3rd. No, it's going on. It was introduced. It was going to be adopted on the 17th. So June 17th is when those changes would go into effect. So we did a study session back in January, I want to say, and essentially what we're trying to do is really take a close look at what requires design review and what does not, and create a differentiation between permit levels. So right now, every design review that comes in comes to the commission, and so we would be creating a minor design review permit. The first step is to create the framework and create the process. The only permits that would not be coming forward are landscape plans. So the plan to start streamlining is to have sign permits, administratively approvable, and landscape plans. And then from there, we're going to kind of make tweaks as need be, but I think that will really help our workload and help keep the commission focused on projects that are really important. The other big change to the design review ordinance is that the Planning Commission had a wonderful recommendation to have historic resource evaluations be something that is filtered through the city. Over the years, we've had just some back and forth between opinions on what is historic and what is not, and this way the city would kind of control that dialogue, and it would just kind of make an even playing field, and that way everybody understands what the rules and regulations are. We would be updating for CEQA compliance. Right now our trigger for design review, it says built before 1945. State law is anything over 50 years old, which is a little worrisome. As you know, I'm getting closer to that age. I'm going to be a historic resource soon. And so it's really trying to clean up language and make it as clear as possible, and is just sort of one step in the right direction. But that will go into effect, as I said, on June 17th. So we have a little bit of an interim where our next meeting in June, the old regulations would still be on the books, and then for the meetings thereafter, the new regulations would be in effect. So lots of exciting things going on, and then going to keep working on trying to get our design guidelines updated and have them be as objective and clear as possible.
So as I understand the intent, because you're trying to keep things from going through 5 reviews, right, as part of it.
Correct.
How much impact does that do to staff? Doesn't that stack a lot of load on you guys?
It's not, it should be less work, because what we would do as an administrative approval would basically be what we do right now, where we write the staff report and then we would send that out and be done. Where now I have to make a presentation, which takes time. I have to come and attend a hearing, give a presentation, and so my job would have been done last Friday. Whereas now this week I had more things that I needed to prepare for.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So the decision will be basically like, what do we do for a staff report or a resolution? So we're doing the work already. So the only additional work is going to be, right now we don't post decisions on the website. And I guess they kind of do. We basically do it all anyway. So it really should save a lot of time and a lot of money. If you are, as you saw tonight, it wasn't just the applicant, it's the architect, it's the engineers come, and when you add up everybody's time, it's $1,000 an hour for someone to come to a hearing. It's not cheap, plus their travel time.
You gotta stay strong on those signs for us.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, the goal is that the requirements are just going to be so black and white and crystal clear that it's, you know, the sizes are just really clear. As you know, we've been moving away from doing variances and making exceptions. It's led us to this really kind of wonky place. It's really hard to make an exception for one person and then tell somebody else no. And so for the last few years, we've really just been trying to stick with what the rules are. And so moving forward, we'll be getting rid of sign variances altogether.
It should make things a lot easier, because that's one of the hard things, like, is it really worth a variance? Because they're usually like this close to being conforming. So, no, I
Yeah, so we
support
will
that.
not have sign variances moving forward.
Nice. Alrighty. Did that include the issues and updates?
It did.
Oh, great. Well, at 7:10, I will adjourn this meeting.